Hello. Welcome. I don't know what happened there, but it's going. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Mysterious Forces Live, and that's right, it is Friday, April 5th, 2019. It is 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Of course, right here in Arizona, it's still good old 7 o'clock. How's everybody doing? Glad you're here. I'll take a peek at the chat room in a minute once I get things going. I'm so glad you're here. We're doing alternative impersonations here tonight. Wonder who the first person to guess this. Of course, it's a different color, but I am Locutus of Borg. They look good. That is a UV laser, and I didn't even shine that straight into the iris of the camera. This thing online, wow, you can even see it on camera. It's impressive. There's light in here, and I ordered this from China, and it's really strong. And if you'd like a demonstration, check this out. So there's that. Lest you think that it's not dangerous. You wouldn't want to jack up any animals or anything else or do any evil deeds with this. Look at that. Burned a hole right through it. That's a 3x5 index card. That's right. So it's turned into what? Mr. Wizard or something all of a sudden around here. Neil deGrasse Tyson, whatever. Anyway, no, I just think it's a lot of fun. I dig it. And I really wanted to see what the pseudo Locutus thing would look like. And I would be afraid, since this thing's so powerful, to blast it into my camera. So I am not going to do that. This crap's expensive. I hope you've all had a good week. I'm going to touch on this briefly. It certainly isn't the onus of the show whatsoever. I do want to tell you that you need to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I hit 460 subscribers today at some point. So thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you for liking. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for comments. I had some very touching personal comments from episodes last week. And that was just from the trolls. No, not really. There was a couple of people that said some really kind things. And I appreciated their thoughtful comments. So watch the show tomorrow. I'm going to have my good friend Jiggy on. And he has a podcast called Paranormal Hood. And he operates out of Boston. And I met him at Contact in the Desert last year. And him and I really hit it off. And I interviewed him. But when I interviewed him, I did something wrong on a technical level. I hooked something up wrong or something. And it split our, we weren't in stereo, and one person was in one speaker and one person in the other speaker. And it was a fantastic interview, but I just did not find it on an audio scale at my professional standards. So I've never broadcast that interview. So I'll revisit the topic and his story tomorrow and what he does. And then later this month, I'm going to travel to Boston. I'm going to appear on Paranormal Hood, and we're going to goof off in Boston doing some paranormal stuff. So we'll keep you posted on that. We'll let you go on that one. This week, over the last couple of days, it took me 2 days to digest the what I found to be actually kind of hilarious Alex Jones deposition. I watched all of the approximate 3 hours of Alex Jones sitting like a deer trapped in the headlights for a deposition. The Sandy Hook Elementary parents are suing Alex Jones, as you well know, I'm sure, and over him saying that Sandy Hook was a false flag, that there were actors and actresses that were pretending to be victims, that some children weren't killed. Like, he went all the way with the bullshit there for a while. And then he backed off of it, and then the lawsuit came out. So he's I'll tell you what's fascinating, and I don't know how much Alex Jones you can take, but he was certainly toned down. But I don't know how this is possible, and I'm remiss in not having remembered the attorney's name, but the attorney that was conducting the deposition, not was Alex Jones' counsel, but the counsel for the parents. I don't know how this is possible, but the attorney asking the questions really came off like an asshole, like kind of a petulant asshole. And Alex Jones kind of ran circles around this guy. And Alex Jones hemmed and hawed and said, I can't remember. And that was 6 years ago. And some of his expressions are awesome if you listen to the questions. And some of the questions were truly convoluted. And they were some of the questions, many of them were designed to kind of put words in Alex Jones' mouth or to get him to, excuse me, acquiesce or agree that he had somehow, excuse me, caused damage or further emotional pain to the parents of the Sandy Hook students. And it was just Alex Jones really did a good job of like dancing around this guy's questions and not giving him a straight answer. And you could tell that he was frustrated, the attorney was, and Alex Jones got the better of him. I watched it. It was like a sport. It was just like Alex Jones just toyed with him and didn't quite answer his question. And they were literally showing Alex Jones like 2 and 3 and 4 second clips of things he had said. And all he had to say was, I don't know what kind of context that was in. I don't know what that was in reference to. And was able to, and he just made constant comments like, well, the audio has been altered and it sounds different. And these have been edited, highly edited. And so as soon as Alex Jones could start picking apart their evidence and even show that it wasn't really presented in the best way possible, he really got the upper hand in that one. And I'm not saying by any means that I'm an Alex Jones fan or that I am rooting for him to escape whatever justice may befall him. I certainly disagree with what he was saying about Sandy Hook, even though I'll tell you what, this is a radioactive topic. And I know someone who's pretty well known who at first tiptoed up to the Sandy Hook topic and then backed off. It is radioactive. And I think when it comes to false flags and conspiracies and cover-ups, I certainly think that a tragedy happened at Sandy Hook Elementary School. And I don't believe that anyone is a crisis actor. But I do think that there were some weird peripheral facts and things that happened around that are just kind of weird. And some things that haven't been answered to my satisfaction, like just to start running the drill for such an event on the day that such an event happens is reminiscent of 9/11, where they were conducting drills that were dealing with the kind of attack that was actually happening at that time. So when too many coincidences start to gather around in one location, it starts to look suspicious. But I certainly, by all means, believe that those children were horribly massacred, and their parents and families and that whole community is suffering. And I wouldn't question that. I just think there was some weird shit going around the details of that case. But like I said, it's radioactive and no one's going to touch it. And I'll tell you what, I'll even lump myself in with that. Like, no matter what I may think on the sidelines, I am not sticking my foot in that water. That is, no good will come of that for anyone. So I just hope that the parents of those victims and the families and extended community can find some peace of mind at some point. And I don't know, have something close to closure. I don't think they ever will. But anyway, let's talk about death, destruction, and cancer. No. What I did want to talk about tonight is this book that I have read. It's called The Inevitable. And let's see, I'll try to get it. So it's kind of tough with the light. The subtitle, it's called The Inevitable. It's by Kevin Kelly, and it's Understanding the 12 Technological Forces That Shape Our Future. And just so you know, the brief description on the inside of the book for Kevin Kelly. This is Penguin Books, by the way. And it says Kevin Kelly helped launch Wired magazine and was its executive editor for its first 7 years. He has written for the New York Times, The Economist, Science, Time, and the Wall Street Journal, among many other publications. His previous books include Out of Control, New Rules for the New Economy, Cool Tools, and What Technology Wants. Currently, he is a senior maverick at Wired and lives in Pacifica, California. And I wish I was like, Kevin Kelly, welcome to the show. But I doubt that some guy with that kind of credit is going to come on this show. I wish he would. If I could net a big fish like that, I would. But I will stay on task. This is an interesting book, and it was written from an interesting point of view. Of course, this guy is really kind of tapped directly into the tech world, having been the managing editor of Wired magazine, so on and so forth. He probably knows everybody or has at least met everyone. And what was interesting about this book, and I'm going to read the titles of the chapters, and then the titles of those chapters really overall describe the arc of the book and what the book is really about. And they're simple names. They're one word. There's an introduction, and chapter 1 is becoming. Chapter 2 is cognifying. Chapter 3 is flowing. Chapter 4 is screening. Chapter 5 is accessing. Number 6 is sharing. 7 is filtering. 8 is remixing. And I know your imagination has to be fired up, right? 9 is interacting. 10 is tracking. 11 is questioning. And 12 is beginning. And he has a very interesting introduction. And I want to kind of give you a little bit of context here. I'm going to try to make this interesting. I am good at reading out loud. And I'll try not to make this dry and boring. So just hang on with me, and then we'll get into the meat of this, because it's really interesting. We just need to have a little bit of context so that you can understand what's going on here. And he's talking about how when he had first used an Apple computer when he was a kid, and it was before it had been hooked up to the modem and the phone line, and what he was experiencing on the computer. And it was kind of a flat, not flat affect. It was kind of a flat experience for him. It wasn't very fulfilling. And he says, and so his opinion of computers were that they were kind of dull. And he writes in the introduction, my opinions totally changed a few months later when I plugged the same Apple II into a phone line with a modem. Suddenly, everything was different. There was an emerging universe on the other side of the phone jack, and it was huge, almost infinite. There were online bulletin boards, experimental teleconferences, and this place called the internet. The portal through the phone line opened up something both vast and at the same time human-scaled. It felt organic and fabulous. It connected people and machines in a personal way. I could feel my life jumping up to another level. Looking back, I think the computer age did not really start until this moment, when computers merged with the telephone. Standalone computers were inadequate. All the enduring consequences of computation did not start until the early 1980s, that moment when computers married phones and melded into a robust hybrid. And I remember that time myself. I was alive, I was young, and it seemed all kind of stupid and abstract to me. And if I had not thought that it was stupid and abstract, I'd probably have a lot more money now, because I could have gotten in on the ground floor of that. So he's just talking about his personal experience with computers, that the computer age truly started when we married this digital technology with the phone line, that ability to connect with other people in real time. And he talks about what will happen in the next 30 years with technology. And he talks about a lot of societal shifts that will happen. And he says, not all of this shift will be welcomed. Established industries will topple because their old business models no longer work. Entire occupations will disappear together with some people's livelihoods. New occupations will be born and they will prosper unequally, causing envy and inequality. The continuation and extension of the trends I outline will challenge current legal assumptions and tread on the edge of outlaw, a hurdle for law-abiding citizens. By its nature, digital network technology rattles international borders because it is borderless, rather. There will be heartbreak, conflict, and confusion in addition to incredible benefits. And I think we already see this coming with technology, right? We have already seen some of these effects happen in our society. And so there's a couple great quotes in his introduction. I just want to throw them out there. One of them is, in the intangible digital realm, nothing is static or fixed. Everything is becoming. And I'll read that a second time to let you digest it. In the intangible digital realm, nothing is static or fixed. Everything is becoming. And as it turns out, becoming is the last chapter of the book, and this has a lot to do with the overall theme of the book. And I love this quote. I think it's amazing, and I had not thought of this, so this was like a new paradigm for me to consider as I read the book. It said, our greatest invention in the last 200 years was not a tool or a gadget, but the scientific process itself. And I had not considered the scientific process as an invention. But if you think about it, it was a collective invention put together and shared amongst humanity. And because we invented the scientific method, then instead of having one gadget that was revolutionary or one kind of technology, we were able to develop a multitude of technologies that grew exponentially from the center of that scientific process. And that was kind of a paradigm shifting for me to think about that. And I just had not considered the scientific processes as an invention, but I totally see his point. And I think that was a good way to introduce these concepts and just kind of frame the book. And when he talks about, excuse me, in the beginning of the chapter on becoming, he says, technological life in the future will be a series of endless upgrades, and the rate of graduations is accelerating. Features shift, defaults disappear, menus morph. I'll open up a software package I don't use every day, expecting certain choices, and whole menus have disappeared. No matter how long you've been using a tool, endless upgrades make you into a newbie. The new user often is seen as clueless. In this era of becoming, everyone becomes a newbie. Worse, we will all be newbies forever. That should keep us humble. That bears repeating. All of us, every one of us, will be endless newbies in the future, simply trying to keep up. And here's why. First, most of the important technologies that will dominate life in the next 30 years from now have not yet been invented. So naturally, you'll be a newbie to them. Secondly, because the new technology requires endless upgrades, you will remain in the newbie state. Third, because the cycle of obsolescence is accelerating, the average lifespan of a phone app is a mere 30 days, you won't have time to master anything before it is displaced, so you will remain in the newbie mode forever. Endless newbie is the new default for everyone, no matter your age or your experience. So if you're like me and you're in your 50s or older and you think that it's not fun to keep up with all this technological change in your everyday life, if when the ATMs started coming out and you started to get frustrated because you weren't actually talking to a teller, well, suck it up, folks. It's coming. And this is the way of the future. This trend of becoming, that everything exists in a state of potentiality. And as some of these other themes come up, you'll see how this all interlocks. So the next element is cognifying. The next chapter is cognifying, which is, as you might guess, thinking, or what? Another term for artificial intelligence. And so they're talking about the way that artificial intelligence will be integrated into all of these gadgets, the Internet of Things, a term you've heard by now, I'm sure. And even though that might seem obvious, he's talking about how this integration of artificial intelligence will take different levels and different kinds of meaning. And how we need a different type of brain or a different kind of mind for a different task. We're not going to create a computer that has one kind of artificial intelligence that's going to handle a wide variety of tasks. It's going to be task specific. And he lays it out pretty clearly. Let's see. He taught this is the lineage of how he's talking about adopting technology and whether we're going to let robots do our work for us. And so he says that this whole cycle of accepting technology will go something like this. 1, a robot / computer cannot possibly do the tasks I do. This is in the first person of a human. And then number 2, later, okay, it can do a lot of those tasks, but it can't do everything I do. Later on, okay, it can do everything I do, except it needs me when it breaks down, which is often. Then more time elapses. Okay, it operates flawlessly on routine stuff, but I need to train it for new tasks. More time goes by. Okay, it can have my old boring job because it's obvious that was not a job that humans were meant to do. So there's some level of acceptance there, right? And time goes on. It's like, wow, now that robots are doing my old job, my new job is much more interesting and pays more. So there's some kind of social benefit to this acquiescing to the future. And number 7, later, I'm so glad that a robot / computer cannot possibly do what I do now. And he's saying that robots and computers with artificial intelligence will most certainly take over our mundane tasks. And part of what faces humanity is going to be how we spend our time and find new jobs and new ways to make a living, and how we're going to refocus our energy when a lot of these jobs just disappear. So, and by the way, I forgot to mention this. These not only are these the names of the chapters, but these are called meta trends by him. And number 3 is flowing. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. He talks about how in the very beginning of digital technology, it followed the old office model of you have a desktop, you're using folders, and then you have files. So that was the first wave of the digital age. And then the second wave of the digital age came. That was harder to say than I thought. Which is everything went from desktop to you were looking at pages, and instead of folders, you're looking at networks, and instead of files, you're really focused on the browser, right? And he's saying right now we're in the beginning of the third phase, the third age of this digital technology, because now what are we talking about? Information flowing, information streaming. How your feed flows on your Twitter feed. It's a feed, right? It's a stream. You're streaming content, you're streaming music, you're streaming information. So we are into this flowing and streaming aspect of technology. And just that difference in perception of that is going to change how we look at this. And so these different ways of thinking about the work and how the work is organized is going to change the way we live our lives. And I think in some ways that one's kind of obvious, but in other ways, and trust me, I'm not really doing a big spoiler alert on this. I'm just hitting the highlights and hoping that maybe you'll see something in this or hear something that jogs some independent thinking for yourself, or maybe you'll, I'm by no means being paid by anyone to review this book. It's a book I bought on my own that I read, and I'm reviewing with you. So if it sounds interesting and you want to go buy it, go for it. If not, then you can just deal with this. So number 4, the fourth chapter and the fourth level of this is screening. And he's taken a lot of words that are nouns and turning them into verbs, into actions. Like, we don't just, like, you're not just going to have a screen, but you will call it screening, that it will be considered to be screening. And he talks about how our society and our culture is based around the spoken word and the written word, and how the printed word was the first level of technology that helped spread information on a mass scale. And he's saying that there's going to be a clash between people who are considered people of the book, people who are married to the idea of text, and therefore kind of rooted in laws and kind of this stable, ongoing state of technology and society, right? But these people of the screen that are evolving, they believe that technology will be able to solve all of our problems, that given enough effort and thought, that technology will be the problem solver, not words and not laws. And this paradigm shift, if you think about that, this idea that government and laws, legislation, law enforcement is the solution for all of society's problems, versus thinking that there's a technological answer, a technological solution to the ills of our society. And the challenges that we face, that is a major paradigm shift in consciousness. That is a new way of viewing the world. And that's what he's saying, that over the next 30 years, the human perception of the world and what is possible is going to change in radical ways. So it's the people of the book versus the people of the screen. And this tension and this clash between these two ways of thinking may play out in interesting ways in our society. Chapter number 5, accessing. And we all think about that right now, right? We think about accessing a lot. And this is one of the more interesting chapters to me, because we're really in this accessing phase. We're in the infancy of that right now. And if you think about the bicycles, cars, and scooters that cities are buying, and you can attach your credit or debit card into the system and then pick up a scooter or a bicycle anywhere within that city limits. They all have RFID chips to track them, right? So you're not going to like take it home. And they all look the same, so you're not going to sell it to someone. I mean, you know, it's like, you know, they thought some of that stuff through. So it's community property, but it's not something you own. And the way it was described was, Uber is the largest taxi company in the world, yet they don't own any taxis. Airbnb is the largest service for accommodations in the world, and yet they own no real estate. And Facebook has an economy of their own, and they have no inventory. These are, I know that it seems oversimplified, maybe overly obvious, but this decentralized way of thinking that something can belong to the community and benefit everyone and allow greater access by people of all strata in society. You know, if suddenly the poor have equal access to public transportation in the same way that people of privilege and means do, then they have a better chance of being able to get to school, to further their education, to get to their job, whatever it is they're doing in their life to make it better or just survive. They have better chances with this shared communal type of property. And this is a huge trend. And I think we're going to go that way. And I think we're going to see pools of people that I think they're going to buy into like car clubs. I think we're going to see trends in the next 10 to 20 years where perhaps people that are the age of millennials now and younger will not buy cars on the level that cars are purchased now by individuals. They might be purchased by groups, or there will be services that allow people to have access to cars and other forms of transportation. They won't be owning this stuff themselves. They won't be paying to have the flat tire changed. They won't be paying a mechanic when the transmission gets screwed up. And they won't be having to pay the insurance, and they won't have to worry about if somebody busts the car window out and steals the stereo. That becomes a larger community issue and not the problem of the individual. So as the economy shifts, as technology shifts, this concept of accessing, it's incredibly deep. And it's really accessing versus owning. And this too will change the way we see our lives and our interconnectedness with each other. And I know someone out there is going to be like, oh, this sounds like socialism. But once again, this is not a political show. I'm not going to discuss democratic socialism, and all this shit. We're not going down that rabbit hole. We're just talking about technology and its effects on society and the human experience. And so the next level of this, chapter 6, is sharing. And I love the opening of this, and I'll just let you be the judge. The very opening of chapter 6 is, Bill Gates once derided advocates for free software with the worst epithet capitalists can muster. These folks demanding that software should be free, he said, were a new modern sort of communist, a malevolent force bent on destroying the monopolistic incentive that helps support the American dream. Gates was wrong on several points. For one, free and open source software zealots are more likely to be political libertarians than commie pinkos. Yet there is some truth to his allegation. The frantic global rush to connect everyone to everyone all the time is quietly giving rise to a revised technological version of socialism. Think about that. I'm going to read that last sentence again. Absorb that. The frantic global rush to connect everyone to everyone all of the time is quietly giving rise to a revised technological version of socialism. Does that concept scare you, or does that concept give you hope? I'm not here to talk about that. I'm just asking you to internalize that and think for yourself on that one. Communal aspects of digital culture can run deep and wide. Wikipedia is just one notable example of an emerging collectivism. Indeed, not just Wikipedia, but wikis of all sorts. So we're obviously, you know what Wikipedia is, you know what it does, you know how these open source technologies, platforms, ways of doing things, you know how this operates. And yes, it most definitely is access versus owning, and may lead to a kind of technological socialism. But isn't that kind of what we aspire to? Don't we really want people in remote villages and towns across the planet to have access to information technology and help should they need it? Have access to medical care, to have access during a crisis or a natural disaster. This is our greatest hope. And, you know, this is kind of what we aspire to with technology. Chapter 7, filtering. So really what he's saying, filtering is necessary due to the number of options. And he's saying that so many options will open up from technology and from all of the choices that we have to make, that we are going to have new technologies just to do the filtering for us, so that we can get access to what we need and want. And actually, this is going to shape our behavior, because technology, artificial intelligence, is going to be gauging our behaviors and what we do, where we go, what we eat, who we hang out with, what we say in our conversations. And so this kind of artificial intelligence filtering is going to affect our access, right? Our accessing. And he runs down some of the ways that we use filters now. And it's to kind of put you in the frame of mind there, and I'm going to just glide over them. We filter by gatekeepers, authorities, parents, priests, and teachers, shield the bad and selectively pass on the good stuff, right? We filter by intermediaries. We filter by curators. We filter by brands. We filter by governments. We filter by our cultural environment. We filter by our friends. What are our friends watching and eating and doing and seeing and laughing at? And we filter through ourselves, our own preferences, our judgments. And funnily enough, that is not a word. Strangely enough, traditionally, this is the rarest filter, which is an interesting way to frame that. So filtering technologies are going to come into play because we will have far too many options and it will take too long to make a decision. This, the next chapter, which starts on, it is 8, and it's remixing, and it starts on page, oh, it keeps slipping, 193, remixing. Remixing technologies and resources to create new technology. And this is key. And I know that you might be thinking about mashups or whether it's video or music or certainly remixing music comes to mind, right? We all know about DJ remixes, and those are obvious choices on that. But what we're also talking about is wealth being generated not by new resources, but figuring out new ways to repurpose and reuse and recycle resources so that they are more valuable than they are now in their current state. And that's a revolutionary thought, that repurposing, remixing resources to create new hybrid technologies that can then spin off and be mixed and matched with each other can make the resources that we currently have more valuable without having to extract or create or discover or unbury, whatever it is, whatever, name your resource and our method of getting access to that resource. And imagine that we can repurpose in some way through technology. And that whole groups of technologies will emerge from this remixing. I think it's an incredible concept. And it's certainly something worth thinking about for sure. So, let's see. That was remixing. And then the next chapter, chapter 9, most certainly is interacting. And I think we already have a good sense of interacting, and virtual reality comes to mind. And how virtual reality is really going to become so integrated into our daily lives that we'll be using that for relaxation and recreation, that we can buy gym memberships to different gyms through a virtual reality experience for different kinds of workouts. And this virtual reality is really going to affect the healthcare system and how technology interacts with us, monitors us. And I might be getting ahead of myself there, because I think that no, I am getting ahead of myself. This interacting is going to connect people more so than the internet that we have now. He believes that the people of the future are going to look back and see the virtual reality that we have now and the interactivity. And they're going to be like, that wasn't even the internet, because we really are going to be experiencing, like holodeck situations where we have a virtual reality available to us all the time. And this will change design work. This will change how we relax in the evening, how we interact with each other. It could do away with television. You could be in an immersive drama yourself and participate rather than just sit back passively and watch. So there's a lot of ways that interactivity with technology is going to shape our society over the next 30 years. And yes, indeed, tracking our health and our behavioral preferences. And if you think, well, I get a tracking number for my Amazon package and I want to know where it's at. I want to know if it's been sent from, state X, where is it at? Is it in Utah or is it just around the corner and I'm going to see it on my doorstep in the morning? That seems kind of simplistic, but this tracking also encompasses healthcare and monitoring of our health. And of course, the Fitbit and Apple Watch and stuff like that, right? We already know what's going on with that. But this is going to become much, much more integrated. And I know it's weird, but we're probably gonna have toilets that analyze our urine and our bodily output and monitor our health in that way. We're gonna get constant feedback on various states of our health, and our preferences are going to be tracked so that artificial intelligence will anticipate what we want before we even know we want it. And that sounds pretty fucking scary to me. If I don't know, do you have a tendency to maybe want to grab a slice of pizza on a Friday night or eat at a certain type of restaurant on payday as opposed to another kind of day? Where do you go when you feel stressed out? What do you do? Do you go to the park and go for a run? Do you eat a certain kind of comfort food? Do you take a drive? There's lots of different human responses to stressors and situations, both good and bad. And all these preferences and behaviors are going to be monitored and tracked. And, there'll be this whole digital catalog of our own behaviors. And I think in some ways that there are going to be legacy accounts of people that will be left as maybe kind of a form of immortality for people to have a digital file of who you were and what you did. And we're talking about some of the things that are tracked. And I'm just going to go down the list quickly. Movement, traffic, rideshare taxis, long distance travel, drone surveillance, postal mail, utilities, cell phone location and call logs, civic cameras, commercial and private space, smartphones, home surveillance, interactive devices, grocery loyalty cards. That's already a thing, right? E-retailers. Wow. Like this book, you'll probably like, the IRS, credit cards, e-wallets, e-banks, photo face recognition, web activities, social media, search browsers, streaming services, book reading, fitness trackers. It's going to be integrated into our lives on every level. This is going to happen. This is not what if. This is, unfortunately or fortunately, not Philip K. Dick, depending on how you view Philip K. Dick and some of his work. He had some incredible science fiction writing, and he had a equally matched incredible substance abuse problem with cocaine. So just remember, when you're reading Philip K. Dick, you're actually reading through his cocaine addiction. Maybe that'll make it more entertaining for you. Anyway, so one of the next to the last chapter is questioning. And I'm not going to dig too deeply into this because we're already familiar with search engines and we can already extrapolate from what we experience right now that this questioning is going to give us, through technology, a new level of knowing and interconnectedness, this access to information. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that we've seen already in our lives. So it's a lot. I'm not going to dig into that one too much because we already see that. And I think we feel the effects of that very readily in our lives already. So, questioning, access to information. And it's really going to really create an extension of our consciousness through this access to information. If we can know or get readouts on the weather, on traffic, on food, on our health, all of this feedback coming to us, all this information, access to this information, we're going to be making choices based on an accumulation of information that we really can't even understand at this level right now. And then the last chapter in the book is beginning. And he opens the last chapter with thousands of years from now, when historians review the past, our ancient time here at the beginning of the third millennium will be seen as an amazing moment. This is the time when inhabitants of this planet first link themselves together into one very large thing. Later, the very large thing would become even larger, but you and I are alive at that moment when it first awoke. Future people will envy us, wishing they could have witnessed the birth we saw. It was in these years that humans began animating inert objects with tiny bits of intelligence, weaving them into a cloud of machine intelligences, and then linking billions of their own minds into this single supermind. This convergence will be recognized as the largest, most complex, and most surprising event on the planet up until this time. Braiding nerves out of glass, copper, and airy radio waves, our species began wiring up all regions, all processes, all people, all artifacts, all sensors, all facts and notions into a grand network of hitherto unimagined complexity. From this embryonic net was born a collaborative interface for our civilization, a sensitive, cognitive apparatus with power that exceeded any previous invention. This mega invention, this organism, this machine, if we want to call it that, subsumes all the other machines made, so that in effect, there is only one thing that permeates our lives to such a degree that it becomes essential to our identity. This very large thing provides a new way of thinking, perfect search, total recall, planetary scope, and a new mind for an old species. It is the beginning. And I want to read that one sentence over again. It's worth thinking about. This mega invention, this organism, this machine, if we want to call it that, subsumes all other machines made, so that in effect there is only one thing that permeates our lives to such a degree that it becomes essential to our identity. And that is the question, folks. Are we afraid of that? Are we afraid of subsuming the human lives that we've led up until this point to technology? Are we going to surrender some of our personal responsibility for ourselves and for our environment to technology? I would say that if you're a glass is half empty kind of person, that this already conjures up a dystopian future that may look something like the world of Blade Runner. And I think for good reason. I think it's easy for us to imagine that kind of a dystopian future because it's really a reflection of our baser instincts and our human behavior. If you're a glass half full kind of person, a person who sees technology as the solution for the human condition in as much as we can affect or control that, then you should be welcoming this new kind of future with open arms and a sense of hope. And if you're asking me which side I fall down on, I don't fall down on either side. I think it's going to be a mixture of both. I think we're going to have some dystopian, crazy fucking shit happen that we can't imagine. I think there might be different kinds of crimes committed against people. There'll be new kinds of atrocities that will be enabled through technology. Terrorism just being one of those outlets. But, you know, God forbid what a fucking serial killer could do with this level of technology, with tracking and interactivity and database access. So that's a pretty scary fucking thought. But I think that it's going to be more on the side of the glass is half full. I think that technology probably will eventually save us. I think it's going to be the only thing that really helps us pull our head out of our collective asses on global climate change and help us do what is necessary and take the correct steps in making sure that we don't destroy the environment to the extent that we make living on this planet a living fucking hell for us and every other species on this planet. I think we need to think very deeply about that and think about that. And in my opinion, some of these, I mean, a lot of these technologies are obviously emerging already and already affecting us. But I think dealing with climate change is probably going to be that one challenge, that one crisis that we face collectively that's really going to spur us on to a next level of being. But, you know, this is going to play out in politics and economics and national boundaries. And the fallout from that is going to be tremendous. And it's going to be what he said in the very beginning, for good and bad. And as I close out tonight, as we think about these things and think about the next 30 years, or you're thinking about your life right now and how some of these things are affecting your life right now, or how it's affected your life over the last 10 years, or look at your life over the last 20 years, how much your life has changed just due to technology, just the smartphone alone. You're never lost anymore. You always have directions. You don't have to stop at a gas station and ask directions. You've always got a GPS in your pocket. You've got access to more information than the greatest leaders in all of past history. It's in your fucking pocket. And that's a tremendous amount of power. I hope that we can use it correctly and wisely and safely and better ourselves and better our position on this planet and help out our fellow species as well, and create a better future and not some dystopian piece of shit that looks like Blade Runner. Our greatest invention in the last 200 years was not a tool or a gadget, but the scientific process itself. And that's author Mr. Kevin Kelly, founding managing editor of Wired magazine. He wrote The Inevitable: Understanding the 12 Technological Forces That Will Shape Our Future. I endorse this book because I bought it with my own money and I read it. I'm telling you about it, but I'm not being paid for it, so it's just a personal recommendation. And it's the happy music. Wow, and look at how long I talked about a book. I need to do this more often, right? Let me know if you did like this. Before I go, let me scan really quickly. Tim Braith, Out of Mind. Tim Braith, interesting. Let's see. Out of Mind. Hello, Sherry Scoble, Pursuing X, of course. I like someone, KB. I had psychosis when I talked about Sandy Hook. I love that. That was just some shit, man. If you really want to be entertained, do some fucking bong hits and watch the Alex Jones depositions. Tomorrow night, Jiggy, Paranormal Hood. Like and subscribe and share. I did it twice. I did the beginning and the end. Like, subscribe, share. Thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you for your wonderful comments. Keep them up. Keep them coming. Tomorrow night, Jiggy from Paranormal Hood. And thank you so much. And here we go.